It was the kind of betrayal that leaves a scar so deep, you wonder if you'll ever feel whole again. I remember the night it all started, when my world once stable began to crumble. I was standing in front of the mirror in our bedroom, getting ready for bed, brushing my hair in the soft glow of the lamp. It was a quiet evening, nothing out of the ordinary. My husband Tom was in the living room, watching some late-night sports recap, the hum of the TV drifting faintly through the hallway. We'd been married for nearly 10 years. 10 years of laughter, shared memories, arguments, and makeups. In many ways we were that perfect suburban couple, the house, the kids, the jobs that kept us comfortable. But beneath it all, there was something that had been slowly eroding. Something I had ignored for far too long. It wasn't that I didn't love Tom. I did. At least I thought I did. But love can grow complicated when the years pile up, when routine sets in, when the excitement of those first few months of infatuation fades into the mundanity of everyday life. And in the quiet spaces that followed, I felt it creeping in, the doubt, the loneliness. The feeling that somehow we had drifted apart without ever realizing when or how it happened. I never thought I would be the kind of woman to cheat. The very idea used to disgust me. I had always seen myself as loyal, committed, someone who could weather the storms of a marriage. But life, as I've come to learn, isn't so black and white. It was at work where things changed. Mark had been hired as part of the new management team. He was charming in a way that felt effortless, with an easy smile that lit up his whole face, and eyes that always seemed to linger a second too long when he looked at me. First I brushed it off. It was harmless, right? A little flirting, a compliment here and there. Everyone did it. But it didn't stay harmless for long. There was something about the way Mark looked at me that made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. Tom used to look at me like that, back when we were young, when we couldn't keep our hands off each other, when the simplest touch could ignite something between us. But now things were different. We hardly touched anymore, not in that way. And when we did, it was mechanical, routine, like something we were doing out of obligation rather than desire. Mark made me feel wanted again. I tried to resist it. God, I tried. But it felt like trying to hold back a tidal wave with my bare hands. The attraction between us grew stronger every day. It was in the way his hand would brush against mine when we passed in the hallway, the way his voice would drop lower when he spoke to me in meetings, the way I'd catch him staring at me when he thought no one was looking. The first time it happened, it was almost by accident. We were working late, alone in the office, going over some reports. The tension between us had been simmering for weeks, and that night it finally boiled over. One minute we were sitting across from each other discussing numbers, and the next he was leaning in, his lips hovering just inches from mine. I could feel his breath on my skin, my heart racing in my chest. I told myself to pull away, to stop it before it went too far. But I didn't. I couldn't. When his lips met mine, it was like a spark igniting something deep inside me that I hadn't felt in years. I knew it was wrong. I knew I was betraying the man I had promised to spend my life with. But in that moment, none of that seemed to matter. All I could think about was the way Mark made me feel alive, desirable, wanted. What started that night in the office didn't stop there. We began meeting in secret, stolen moments in parking lots, hurried lunches at out-of-the-way diners, late nights in his apartment when I told Tom I was working late. Every time we were together, the guilt gnawed at me, but I couldn't stop. I didn't want to stop. It wasn't long before Tom started to notice something was off. He wasn't stupid. He knew me better than anyone, and he could sense the distance growing between us. He asked me one night as we lay in bed, staring up at the ceiling in the dark, if something was wrong. I lied. I told him everything was fine, that I was just stressed from work, tired. He believed me, or at least he pretended to. But the lies kept piling up, and the weight of them was suffocating. Every time I looked at Tom, I saw the man who had loved me, who had been there for me through everything, and I hated myself for what I was doing to him. I started to pull away from Mark, to try and put an end to it before everything came crashing down. But it was too late. One afternoon, Tom showed up at my office unannounced. He had been suspicious for weeks, and that day he finally decided to confront me. He saw the way Mark looked at me, the way I couldn't meet his eyes when Tom walked into the room. He didn't say anything then, but I knew. I could see it in his face. He knew. That night, after the kids were in bed, he asked me, point blank, had I been unfaithful? I wanted to lie. I wanted to tell him that nothing had happened, that he was imagining things. But I couldn't. The guilt, the shame, it was too much. So I told him the truth. I told him everything. The look on his face when I confessed will haunt me for the rest of my life. It was like I had taken everything we had built together, everything we had shared, and torn it apart right in front of him. He didn't yell. He didn't scream. He just sat there silent, his eyes filled with a pain so deep, I thought I might drown in it. I begged for his forgiveness. I told him I loved him, that I had made a mistake, that I would do anything to make it right. But I could see in his eyes that something between us had been broken, something that no amount of apologies could fix. We've been trying to move past it, to rebuild what was lost. But things aren't the same. They never will be. There's a distance between us now, a wall that I built with my own hands, brick by brick. I don't know if we'll ever be able to tear it down. And every night, as I lie next to him in bed, I wonder if he still loves me, if he still sees the woman he fell in love with all those years ago, or if all he sees now is the woman who betrayed him. I don't know if I'll ever find the answer. But I live with the consequences of my choices every single day. And that, I suppose, is the price I have to pay. Every day since that night feels like a blur. As if I'm walking through a thick fog, unsure of where I'm going or what I'm doing. Life keeps moving forward. The kids still need breakfast in the morning. There are still meetings at work, groceries to buy, laundry to fold, but inside everything feels hollow. Tom and I barely speak now. Oh, we still exchange words, of course. Conversations about the kids, about what needs to be done around the house, about bills that need paying. But the warmth, the familiarity, the ease with which we used to speak to each other, it's all gone. When he looks at me, there's a distance in his eyes, like he's searching for the woman he thought he knew and coming up empty. I can't blame him. How do you look at someone the same way after they've broken your trust? After they've shattered the image of who you thought they were? Sometimes I catch myself wondering if it would have been better if I had never told him the truth. If I had just kept my secret, lived with the guilt in silence. Would we have been able to go on pretending everything was fine? Would the lie have eventually eaten me up from the inside? Or would it have faded away with time? But I did tell him. And now there's no going back. Mark is out of the picture, of course. That ended the moment I confessed. I cut off all contact with him, blocked his number, changed my routine at work so we wouldn't cross paths. I thought maybe if I removed that temptation, if I erased him from my life, I could somehow make things right with Tom. But removing Mark hasn't removed the damage. It hasn't erased the betrayal. There are nights when I lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how we got here. I replay every moment in my head. The first time I let Mark get too close, the first kiss, the first lie I told Tom to cover it all up. How could I have let things go so far? I used to think I was strong, that I had control over my life. But in those moments it felt like I was falling, spiraling into something I couldn't stop, even though deep down I knew I should. I think Tom knows I regret it. He knows I'm sorry. But sorry doesn't fix things, does it? Sorry doesn't rebuild trust. Sorry doesn't erase the nights I spent in another man's arms, the lies I told, the moments I betrayed him over and over again, in ways both big and small. Some days I catch him watching me when he thinks I'm not paying attention. His face is unreadable, but I can see the thoughts turning behind his eyes. I wonder if he's imagining what it was like, if he's picturing me with Mark, picturing what we did, where we went, how it felt. I wonder if he's torturing himself with those images, the way I torture myself with the guilt. I try to reach out to him to close the gap between us. I touch his arm when we pass in the hallway, try to hold his hand when we sit on the couch, make an effort to be the wife I should have been all along. But every time I do, he flinches just slightly. It's like he's afraid to let me in again, afraid that if he does, I'll hurt him all over again. We've been to counseling. I insisted on it after everything came out. I thought maybe if we had someone to help us, someone to guide us through this, we could find a way back to each other. But even the therapist seems unsure of how to help us. How do you rebuild something when the foundation has been shattered? How do you learn to trust someone again after they've proven themselves untrustworthy? The sessions are awkward. We sit there side by side, but it feels like there's an ocean between us. The therapist asks us questions about our marriage, about what led to the affair, about how we're feeling now. Tom is mostly silent. He answers when he has to, but he doesn't offer much beyond that. I do most of the talking, trying to explain why I did what I did, trying to put into words the loneliness, the disconnect I felt before it all happened. But every time I speak, I feel like I'm digging the hole deeper. Because no matter what I say, it doesn't change the fact that I made a choice. I could have talked to Tom. I could have tried to fix things before I turned to someone else. But I didn't. And that's something neither of us can forget. The therapist talks about rebuilding trust, about taking small steps toward healing. She tells Tom that it's okay to feel angry, that it's okay to take time. But what she doesn't say, and what I'm starting to realize, is that some things can't be fixed. Some things once broken stay broken. Tom has started working later. He says it's because of new projects at the office, but I know better. He's avoiding me. I can see it in the way he rushes out the door in the morning, the way he comes home just in time to kiss the kids goodnight, and then locks himself in the office with his laptop. I've asked him about it, but he brushes me off, says he's just busy. But the truth is he's pulling away piece by piece, day by day. And I don't know how to stop it. I'm afraid. Afraid that one day I'll come home and he'll be gone. That I'll find a note on the kitchen counter, telling me that he's had enough, that he can't do this anymore. Every time I hear his car pull into the driveway, there's a part of me that holds my breath, waiting for the moment he tells me it's over. I think about what that would mean. Divorce. The word feels foreign in my mouth, but it's a reality I've started to prepare myself for. What would we tell the kids? How would I explain to them that their mother destroyed everything? How would we split our lives, our home, the memories we've built together over the years? I know Tom doesn't want to hurt the kids. He's a good father, and I think that's the only reason he hasn't left yet. But how long can he stay in a marriage that's been poisoned by what I did? How long can he keep pretending that things might go back to the way they were? Sometimes I wonder if leaving would be the kindest thing I could do for him. If I should be the one to end it, to free him from the burden of trying to forgive me, of trying to rebuild something that might never be whole again. But I'm selfish. I don't want to lose him. Even after everything, I still love him. Or maybe I love the idea of him, the life we had before I ruined it all. There's no easy answer. No clean way out of this mess. I made my choice and now I have to live with it. But every day that passes, I wonder how much longer we can keep pretending. How much longer before the cracks we're trying to patch up finally break us apart completely. And the worst part? Even after all this time, even after everything I've lost, there's still a part of me that thinks about Mark. Even after everything that's happened, the memories of Mark creep in when I least expect them. It's a cruel irony, really. I destroyed my marriage, shattered Tom's trust, and yet, there are moments when I close my eyes and my thoughts drift back to Mark. I can't help it. Sometimes it's a smell, a song on the radio, or a fleeting thought that drags me back into those stolen moments. I hate myself for it, but that doesn't make it stop. I think part of it is the fantasy of it all. With Mark, it was never about the real world. It was this escape, this fleeting, intoxicating rush that made me feel something I hadn't felt in years. I felt alive when I was with him. It wasn't about bills or kids or work or the monotony of married life. It was just raw, passionate. But that passion came at a price, and I'm paying for it now. It's strange how something that felt so exhilarating in the moment can feel so hollow now. I used to get lost in those memories, replaying them in my mind like some forbidden fantasy. But now, when I think of Mark, all I feel is emptiness. There's no warmth in the memory anymore. Just guilt. Guilt for what I did to Tom. Guilt for the lies I told. Guilt for throwing away everything good in my life for something that was, in the end, just a fleeting distraction. But still, he lingers in the back of my mind. It's like trying to get rid of a ghost that refuses to leave. Some part of me wonders if Mark ever thinks about me. If he ever regrets what happened, or if I was just another woman in a long line of poor decisions. He was single, of course. He didn't have a family to destroy, a marriage to betray. He could walk away without the same burden that weighs on me every single day. But I wonder, did it mean anything to him? Or was I just something temporary, a passing fling to fill his time? Not that it matters now. Mark is gone. And what's left is the wreckage of my marriage, my family, my life. Tom doesn't know I still think about Mark. At least, I don't think he does. I try to push those thoughts away when I'm around him, try to focus on the present, on fixing what I broke. But every now and then, when we're sitting in silence, when the tension between us hangs thick in the air, I catch myself wondering if he suspects. If he knows that, even though I cut off contact with Mark, there's still a part of me that hasn't fully let go. I don't know why I'm holding on to it. Maybe because letting go would mean admitting that it was all for nothing, that I threw away my marriage for something that didn't even last. Or maybe because holding on to those memories, no matter how painful, is easier than facing the reality that I've lost something far more important. Tom. Tom, who still sleeps beside me every night, but feels a million miles away. Tom, who has stopped touching me, who barely even looks at me anymore. It's not that he's angry, at least not in the way you'd expect. He doesn't yell. He doesn't fight. It's the silence that's the worst. The cold, suffocating silence that stretches between us like a chasm, growing wider with every passing day. We haven't been intimate in months. At first, I tried to initiate, thinking that maybe physical closeness could help bridge the gap between us. But every time I reached for him, he'd pull away, make some excuse, and turn his back to me in bed. Eventually, I stopped trying. How do you touch someone when you know your touch only reminds them of the betrayal? How do you offer comfort when your very presence is a source of pain? I miss him. I miss the way we used to be. I miss the nights we'd stay up late talking about nothing and everything. I miss the way he used to hold me, the way his hand would rest on the small of my back when we walked side by side. I miss the easy laughter, the stolen kisses in the kitchen, the way he'd wrap his arms around me while I was cooking and whisper something silly in my ear just to make me smile. But that man is gone now. Or maybe he's still here, but he's buried beneath the hurt and the anger and the sadness that I caused. Either way, the Tom I knew, the Tom I loved, feels like a distant memory. And I don't know if I'll ever get him back. The kids have started to notice that something's wrong. They're too young to understand what's happening, but they can feel the tension. They ask why Daddy doesn't smile as much anymore, why we don't go on family outings like we used to. I don't know how to answer them. I don't know how to explain that I'm the reason why their father is distant, why our family is falling apart. So I lie. I tell them Daddy's just busy with work, that things will get better soon. But even as the words leave my mouth, I don't believe them. And I'm pretty sure they don't either. Tom is a good father, though. That's one thing that hasn't changed. He still makes time for the kids, still reads them bedtime stories, still shows up for their soccer games and school events. But when he looks at me during those moments when we're standing on the sidelines together, or sitting in the audience at a school play, his eyes are cold. There's no warmth there, no connection. It's like we're two strangers who happen to share a life. I wonder how long we can keep this up. How long we can keep pretending that everything's fine for the sake of the kids. I know Tom is trying. I know he's staying because of them, because he doesn't want to break up our family. But I can see the toll it's taking on him. I can see the way his shoulders sag at the end of the day, the way he avoids being alone with me, the way he hesitates before coming home after work, as if he's bracing himself for the tension that awaits him. I've thought about leaving. I've thought about packing my bags and walking away, giving Tom the freedom he deserves, the chance to find happiness again without the weight of my betrayal hanging over him. But I'm too much of a coward. I can't bring myself to do it. I can't bear the thought of losing my family, of losing Tom, even though I know I've already lost him in so many ways. So I stay. I stay and try to make things right, even though I'm not sure if right is something we can ever achieve again. I cook his favorite meals even though he barely touches them. I try to engage him in conversation, even though most of my attempts are met with one-word responses or silence. I keep hoping that one day something will change. That one day, he'll look at me with love in his eyes again, instead of the dull resignation that's taken its place. But deep down I know the truth. I know that things will never go back to the way they were. The trust we had is gone, and no matter how hard I try, no matter how many times I say I'm sorry, I can't undo what I did. I can't unring the bell. And so we continue day after day, living in this fragile, fractured reality. We go through the motions, playing our parts, trying to keep the pieces of our broken marriage from falling apart completely. But every day it feels like we're holding on by a thinner and thinner thread. I don't know how long this can last. I don't know how long Tom can stay in a marriage where he no longer trusts the person he's with. I don't know how long I can live with the guilt, the shame, the constant ache of knowing that I'm the reason everything fell apart. But for now we keep going. Because that's what you do when you've built a life together. Even if that life has become a shell of what it once was. You keep going because stopping feels too final, too painful, too much like admitting that it's over. Even though deep down we both know that it probably is. There are moments when I try to convince myself that maybe we can still make it. That with enough time, enough effort, maybe we can repair what's been broken. But the more time that passes, the more I realize how naive that hope is. I'm clinging to the remnants of something that no longer exists, to the idea of a marriage that was already crumbling long before the affair ever happened. And now, with everything out in the open, it feels like we're just walking through the ashes, pretending we can somehow rebuild from nothing. Tom doesn't talk about it anymore. In the beginning, after I confessed, there were questions. He wanted to know everything, every detail, every moment I spent with Mark. He tortured himself with those questions, as if knowing the full truth would somehow make it easier to bear. But the more I told him, the more distant he became. It was like watching him slowly detach, brick by brick, until there was nothing left but this cold, emotionless shell of the man I once loved. Now we don't even argue. In a way, I wish we would. I wish he'd get angry, yell, scream, throw something. Anything to show that he still feels something for me, even if it's hate. But instead there's just silence. It's like he's checked out completely, resigned to the fact that our marriage is beyond saving. I hate the silence. It's suffocating. Some nights I lie awake next to him, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of his breathing and wondering what he's thinking. Does he regret staying? Does he lie there wishing he could go back to a time before the affair, before everything went wrong? Or is he simply biding his time, waiting for the moment when he feels strong enough to leave? There's a part of me that wishes he would leave. As much as it would break me, I think it would almost be a relief. At least then there would be an end to this constant, unbearable tension. At least then we wouldn't have to keep pretending. But he stays day after day, and so do I, and we keep going through the motions even though it feels like we're just prolonging the inevitable. I've thought about leaving myself. I've thought about packing up and starting over, giving Tom the space he clearly wants but is too afraid to take for himself. But every time I consider it, something holds me back. Maybe it's the guilt. Maybe it's the fear of what my life would look like without him. Or maybe it's just that part of me, that stubborn, desperate part, that still clings to the hope that somehow, some way things could get better. But it's hard to hold on to hope when every day feels like another step toward the end. The kids can sense it too, even if they don't fully understand. They're too young to grasp the complexities of marriage, of infidelity, but they're old enough to feel the distance between us, to notice the way Tom and I avoid each other's gaze, the way we speak in clipped, neutral tones, never raising our voices, but never laughing, never sharing the kind of easy, natural affection we used to. I see the confusion in their eyes when they ask why Daddy isn't joining us for dinner again, or why Mommy doesn't smile as much anymore. And I feel a deep, gut-wrenching guilt every time I lie to them, telling them that everything is fine, that Daddy is just busy or that Mommy is just tired. I want to tell them the truth, but how could I? How could I burden them with something they're too young to understand, something that would only hurt them more? So I lie. And the lies build up just like they did before, but this time the weight of them feels even heavier. Because this time it's not just Tom I'm lying to. It's my children, the people I care about most in this world. And it's tearing me apart. Tom, for all his coldness toward me, is still an incredible father. He's patient with the kids, attentive, always showing up for them in ways that I can't seem to manage anymore. And that's what makes this even harder. Because I know that when our marriage finally falls apart, it won't just be me who suffers. It'll be them too. They'll lose the family they've always known, the stability they've always relied on. All because of my selfishness, my weakness. I never thought I'd be the kind of woman to destroy her own family. I never thought I'd be the one responsible for the kind of pain that lingers long after the affair itself is over. But here I am, living in the aftermath of my own choices, watching everything I once cared about slowly slip away. The worst part is I don't know how to stop it. I don't know how to fix what I've broken. Tom won't let me in, and I don't blame him. I wouldn't trust me either if I were him. But the longer we go on like this, the more I realize that maybe trust isn't something that can be rebuilt once it's been shattered. Maybe some things once broken are broken forever. And I wonder if that's what Tom is thinking too. If he's waiting for the right moment to tell me he's done, that he's had enough, that he can't keep living in this shadow of a marriage any longer. Sometimes I wish he'd just say it. Rip off the bandage, let the wound bleed, so we can stop pretending that there's still something left to save. But he doesn't. He stays. And I stay. And we keep living this half-life, this ghost of a relationship because the alternative, the finality of divorce, of splitting up our family, of admitting that we've failed, feels too terrifying to face head-on. I've tried to suggest counseling again. I even found another therapist, someone new, someone who might be able to give us a fresh perspective. But Tom just shrugged when I brought it up, like he didn't see the point anymore. "What's the use?" he said one night, his voice flat, emotionless. "We can't change what happened." He's right, of course. We can't. No matter how much I wish I could go back and undo everything, I can't. The affair happened. The lies happened. The betrayal is real, and no amount of therapy is going to erase that. But what I'm struggling with now more than anything is this feeling of inevitability. This sense that no matter what I do, no matter how hard I try to make amends, to show Tom that I'm sorry, that I still love him, it's too late. The damage is done, and there's no going back. There are days when I feel like I'm living in a nightmare I can't wake up from. The guilt, the shame, the regret, they're always there, a constant weight pressing down on me, making it hard to breathe. And every time I look at Tom, every time I see the sadness in his eyes, I'm reminded of the fact that I did this. I'm the one who destroyed everything. I try to tell myself that I'm not a bad person, that I made a mistake, yes, but that doesn't define me. But some days it's hard to believe that. Some days I look in the mirror and I don't recognize the woman staring back at me. I see a stranger, someone I never thought I'd become. The truth is, I don't know how much longer we can keep going like this. Something has to give. We can't keep living in this limbo, pretending that things will get better when deep down we both know they won't. I can feel the end coming. It's like a storm on the horizon, slowly approaching, inevitable and unstoppable. And as much as I dread it, as much as I fear what it will mean for our family, for our children, for my own sense of self, I think maybe, just maybe, it's what we need. Maybe the only way to heal is to let go. Maybe the only way to move forward is to stop holding on to something that's already gone. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if Tom and I will ever find a way back to each other, or if this is the beginning of the end. But what I do know is that I can't keep living in the past, in the shadow of my own mistakes. I have to find a way to forgive myself, even if Tom never does. 'Cause if I don't, I'm not sure I'll ever be able to move on. As the days blend into weeks, and the weeks into months, the weight of everything becomes almost unbearable. It's a constant presence. The guilt, the silence, the knowledge that I've broken something that may never be fixed. Tom and I have become like two people sharing a house but living entirely separate lives. We orbit around each other, passing in the hallways, sharing brief, polite conversations when we need to, but there's no connection. There's no real communication anymore. At first, I told myself this was just a phase, that we were going through the motions until the dust settled and maybe, just maybe, we'd find a way to reconnect. But now I'm not so sure. Every time I look at him, I see how tired he is. Not just physically but emotionally. He's carrying the weight of my betrayal, and it's breaking him down piece by piece. And no matter how much I want to fix things, I don't know how to help him anymore. I don't know if he even wants me to. Our children, who once laughed and ran through the house with boundless energy, seem quieter these days. They've noticed the tension, even if they don't understand it. They're too young to fully grasp what's happening between us, but they're old enough to feel the shift. They can sense that something is wrong, that mommy and daddy don't smile at each other like they used to, don't hold hands, don't share those secret little moments that once made our family feel whole. I've tried to overcompensate with them, pouring all my energy into being the best mother I can be. I take them on outings, bake their favorite treats, sit with them through their homework. But there's only so much distraction I can offer before they return to the reality of our fractured home. They ask why Daddy doesn't come to the park with us anymore, why he always seems so busy, and I don't have the answers. I lie, as I always do, telling them that he's just working hard, that everything will be better soon. But they're smart. They see through it even if they don't say so. I find myself crying more often now, late at night when Tom is asleep beside me, or when I'm in the shower, the water masking my tears. It's the kind of crying that comes from deep within, the kind that leaves you feeling hollow and exhausted afterward. I try to keep it together for the kids, for the sake of the life we've built, but I feel like I'm falling apart, unraveling one day at a time. It's not just the guilt that eats away at me. It's the loneliness. I never imagined I could feel so alone while still being married, while still sharing a home with the man I once loved so deeply. But that's the cruel irony of it all. I'm surrounded by the remnants of our life together, yet I feel more isolated than I ever have before. I've started to wonder what Tom's life is like when he's not at home. He stays at work later and later, sometimes coming home long after the kids are already asleep. He says it's because of deadlines that he's swamped with projects, but I know better. He's avoiding me, avoiding this house, avoiding the confrontation we both know is coming but neither of us wants to face. And I can't help but wonder if he's found someone else, someone to confide in, someone who makes him feel the way I used to before I shattered his trust. The thought of it hurts more than I expected. After everything I've done, after the affair and the lies, the idea of Tom finding comfort in someone else still stings. Maybe it's selfish of me to feel that way. Maybe I don't have the right to be hurt, not after I was the one who betrayed him first. But it doesn't change the fact that the thought of him moving on, of him being with someone else, makes me feel sick. I've caught myself checking his phone a few times, looking for signs, for clues. I hate myself for doing it, for snooping, for invading what little privacy he has left. But I can't help it. It's like I'm desperate to know if he's already given up on us, if he's already found solace in someone else's arms the way I once did. I haven't found anything. No messages, no strange calls. But that doesn't mean it isn't happening. Maybe he's just better at hiding it than I was. Or maybe I'm just paranoid, projecting my own guilt and insecurities onto him. Either way, the trust between us is gone. I can feel it every time we're in the same room. There's this unspoken tension, this underlying sense that we're both waiting for the other shoe to drop, for one of us to finally say the words that will end it all. There have been moments, brief flashes, where I've considered leaving. Not because I don't love him, but because I do. I love him enough to want him to be free of this, free of the pain, the betrayal, the constant reminder of what I did. Maybe he'd be better off without me. Maybe he could find happiness again if I wasn't here, if he didn't have to look at me every day and see the woman who hurt him. But every time I think about leaving, I picture our kids' faces. I imagine them waking up one morning to find that mommy is gone, that their world has been turned upside down. And I can't do it. I can't bring myself to walk away, to be the one who destroys what little stability they have left. So I stay. I stay for them, even though I'm not sure it's the right thing to do. Tom and I still go through the motions of being a couple, but it's all for show. We attend school functions together, sit through parent-teacher conferences side by side, exchange pleasantries with other parents as if everything is normal. But underneath the surface, there's this coldness, this emotional distance that no one else can see but us. We've become actors in our own lives, pretending that we're still a family when in reality we're just two people holding on to a relationship that died long ago. And I think that's the hardest part, knowing that it's over but not being able to let go. I keep telling myself that maybe things will change, that maybe time will heal the wounds I've caused. But how much time? How much time does it take to heal a broken heart? To rebuild trust that's been shattered? And what if it never happens? What if, no matter how hard we try, we can never go back to what we once were? Some days I feel like I'm trapped in this endless cycle of guilt and regret. I wake up in the morning and go through the motions of my day, but there's this constant nagging voice in the back of my mind, reminding me of what I did, of the life I ruined. I try to push it away, to focus on the present, but it's always there, lingering just beneath the surface. I think about Mark sometimes, though less and less as time goes on. At first I couldn't stop thinking about him, about the affair, about the thrill of it all. But now those memories feel distant, almost like they happened to someone else. What once felt exciting and new now feels like a mistake. A terrible, life-altering mistake that I can never take back. It's funny in a way. I risked everything for something that, in the end, meant so little. I destroyed my marriage, hurt the man I love, all for a fleeting moment of passion. And now I'm left to pick up the pieces, to live with the consequences of my actions, knowing that I can never truly make it right. I don't know what he's thinking anymore. He's become a closed book, so guarded, so distant. I've tried to talk to him, to ask him how he's feeling, what he wants, but he just brushes me off. I'm fine, he says. Don't worry about it. But I do worry. I worry because I can see the hurt in his eyes, the way he avoids looking at me, the way he holds himself back. I worry because I know that no matter how much I apologize, no matter how much I want to fix things, I can't undo what I've done. And so we continue. Day after day, we live in this fragile, broken version of our old life, pretending that things might get better even though we both know they probably won't. Maybe one day, Tom will finally tell me he's had enough. Maybe he'll pack his bags and walk out the door, leaving me to face the aftermath of my choices alone. Or maybe I'll be the one to leave, to set him free from the burden of trying to forgive me. But for now we stay. We stay because of the kids, because of the years we've spent together, because of the life we've built. We stay because letting go feels too final, too painful, too much like admitting defeat. And maybe that's the hardest part of all, knowing that the end is coming but not knowing when. Knowing that no matter how much we try to hold on, we can't stop the inevitable. We can't go back to the way things were. We can only move forward one way or another, and hope that somehow, in the midst of all this pain and heartache, we'll find a way to heal. But until then, we keep going. Because that's what you do when you've built a life together. Even if that life is falling apart. You keep going because stopping means facing the truth you're not ready to accept. And for now, that truth is too painful to bear. The days drag on, and the rhythm of our lives has become a numb, quiet routine. I wake up before the sun rises, slipping out of bed as carefully as I can to avoid disturbing Tom. Not that it matters anymore. He doesn't acknowledge me in those moments, not even with a sleepy grunt or a shift in his position. It's as though my presence beside him is something he's grown used to ignoring. I find myself staring at his back sometimes, wondering what's going through his mind. Does he lie awake at night like I do? Does he think about us, about the way things used to be? Or is he already checked out, just waiting for the right moment to end it all? In the kitchen, I make breakfast for the kids in silence. The sound of sizzling eggs, the clinking of plates. It all feels mechanical, like I'm going through the motions of someone else's life. The kids come down eventually, sleepy-eyed but full of energy. They talk and laugh with each other, asking what the plans are for the day. And I smile, answer their questions, and try to keep my voice steady. Tom appears last, like always, grabbing coffee from the counter without so much as a glance in my direction. The kids don't seem to notice the strained atmosphere anymore. Maybe they've grown used to it, or maybe they've learned to tune it out, focusing on the familiar routines of their own lives. Either way, I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful that, at least for a little while longer, they don't have to bear the full weight of what's happening. Tom and I barely talk anymore. The rare conversations we do have are brief and transactional. Did you pay the electric bill? What time is the parent-teacher conference? I'll pick up the kids from soccer practice. There's no warmth, no connection. Just the cold, distant language of two people who share a house but little else. I've stopped asking him how he's feeling, stopped trying to initiate any sort of meaningful dialogue. It's not that I don't care, I do. But every time I've tried, it's like hitting a wall. He doesn't want to talk about it, doesn't want to rehash the affair, the lies, the pain I caused. And I can't blame him. There's only so much you can say about something that's broken. Only so many times you can hear the same apologies before they lose all meaning. So I've learned to keep quiet. I've learned to accept the silence, to live with the distance between us. It's easier that way, I think. Easier than facing the raw, unhealed wounds that still linger between us, the wounds that I caused. But the silence has its own way of cutting deep. It's suffocating, like a constant reminder that no matter what I do, no matter how much I try to make things right, I'll never be able to fix what's broken between us. I'll never be able to undo the damage I caused. I see it in the little things. The way Tom avoids my touch, the way he no longer says goodnight before going to bed. The way he'll sit at the kitchen table with his phone, scrolling through emails or news articles, barely acknowledging my presence. We're not a couple anymore. We're barely even friends. We're just two people who happen to share a life, tied together by our children and the history we've built, but separated by a wall of hurt and betrayal. I can't help but wonder how much longer this can go on. How much longer we can keep pretending, keep avoiding the inevitable. Because that's what this is, isn't it? A long, slow march toward the end. A countdown to the moment when one of us finally has the courage to say it's over. And yet, I can't bring myself to say it. I can't bring myself to be the one to end it, to shatter whatever fragile piece we have left. As broken as things are, as painful as it is to live in this limbo, the thought of truly losing him, of losing the life we built together, terrifies me. I find myself thinking about the affair less and less, though it's never fully gone from my mind. There are still moments when the memories surface unbidden. And I'm flooded with guilt and shame. I think about the way I used to rationalize it, the way I convinced myself that it wasn't so bad, that I wasn't really hurting anyone. But I was wrong. I was hurting Tom even when he didn't know it. And now we're both paying the price. Mark is a distant memory now. I don't think about him the way I used to, with that rush of excitement, that guilty thrill. Now when I think of him, it's with a sense of regret, a sense of mourning for the life I ruined because of a fleeting affair. I haven't seen him in months, haven't spoken to him since I ended it. I wonder sometimes if he's moved on, if he ever thinks about me. But in the end it doesn't matter. Whatever we had was never real, never meant to last. It was a fantasy, a distraction from the emptiness I was feeling in my marriage. And now that the fantasy is over, I'm left to deal with the cold, hard reality. Some nights, after the kids have gone to bed and Tom is shut away in his office or already asleep, I sit in the living room and let the darkness surround me. I stare at the walls, at the pictures of our family hanging there. Photos of happier times, of vacations and birthday parties, of smiles that feel like they belong to a different life. And I wonder if we'll ever be able to get back to that place, if we'll ever be able to smile like that again. I used to think that time would heal us, that if we just stayed together long enough, if we just kept trying, things would eventually get better. But now I'm not so sure. Time hasn't healed anything. If anything, it's only made the distance between us grow wider, the silence heavier. Tom and I haven't talked about divorce. Not yet. But I can feel it lingering in the background, like a shadow that neither of us wants to acknowledge. I think we're both afraid of what it would mean for us, for the kids, for the life we've spent so many years building. We're afraid of the unknown, of what comes after. And so we keep going, keep pretending that things might get better, even though deep down we both know the truth. There are days when I think about what my life would look like without him. I picture myself living in some small apartment, trying to navigate the world as a single mother, trying to explain to the kids why their family fell apart. It's a terrifying thought, one that fills me with a sense of dread and sadness. But more and more, it's starting to feel like an inevitability. I don't want to lose him. As broken as things are between us, I don't want to lose the man I fell in love with all those years ago. But I can't help but wonder if I've already lost him. If the man I loved is gone, replaced by this distant, guarded version of himself that I barely recognize. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if we'll find a way to heal, or if this is the beginning of the end. But what I do know is that we can't keep living like this, in this limbo, this half-life where neither of us is truly happy. Something has to change. Something has to give. And yet I'm paralyzed by fear, fear of the unknown, fear of making things worse, fear of losing the man who, despite everything, I still love. So I stay. I stay and I wait. I wait for something to change, for Tom to say the words I can't bring myself to say. Or maybe I'm waiting for the courage to say them myself. But until then, we keep going. We keep pretending. And we keep living in the shadow of what once was, hoping that maybe, somehow we can find our way back into the light. But deep down, I think we both know we're just waiting for the inevitable. The end is coming. It's only a matter of time.